So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 77 of the series. In the previous episode, we saw the major war between America and Brazil carry on. We also saw some changes in Europe with a country being invaded and a country being released, and a ton of other events. So if you haven't seen the previous episode, make sure to go watch it before seeing this one. But if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is greatly appreciated as we're trying to get the 200k pretty soon. And let's go ahead and jump straight into this scenario. So last time we left off with the war between America and Brazil, which has escalated into more of a global war, not meaning a world war, but a war with countries across the world who are supporting these two sides. So, for example, America's alliance has Mexico, Norway, the Pink Team, and Korea helping it. And previously, we saw Brazil's alliance expand to include Orange Africa and Red Australia. Now, all these countries are helping out Brazil. And with their troops now landed in the continent and actively fighting in this war, we see Brazil and its allies have a lot of success taking back this major city near this bay. At this point, the foreign aid to Brazil is by far overshadowing any foreign aid going to America. Brazil is now clearly the favorite of the world, and that is demonstrated by the amount of foreign aid they're getting, not only from other countries around them, but also countries from Asia, from Europe, and from Africa. And with this foreign aid, Brazil is pushing back America even more, now getting towards the coastal areas and even retaking this major city, linking Brazil back up with the Atlantic Ocean, and slowly but surely squeezing the Americans out of their continent. For now, Brazil is focusing in on taking back all of their occupied land, but they do have plans that are being drawn up to invade this area of America. Before that, though, they take back this major city, which leads to a sweeping campaign to move all the way up to the Atlantic coast in this area. And with that, slowly but surely, the Americans are pushed out of the tip of Colombia. Now, what about the naval aspect of this? Because remember, America's Navy has pretty much decimated all of Brazil's Navy. Well, Brazil is receiving equipment from somebody who has the technology to shoot the boats out of the water. I'm talking about ground to water. Ground at water? Is that a thing? Basically, giant artillery rifles stationed on the shore of Brazil that are shooting out and hitting the naval vessels of America. Now, of course, the vessel has to be stationary or else it's going to be extremely difficult to hit, but anti-naval equipment is flowing into Brazil from a foreign power, and America is not too happy about it. So unhappy that they're going to launch an investigation into who exactly is aiding Brazil, because as of now, some of the people that are supplying Brazil are choosing to do so anonymously. But with America's Navy being beat back, support for the troops on the ground is lessening. Eventually, the Brazilians will retake this island here and split two American divisions off, who will be forced to evacuate as the overwhelming Brazilian forces take back their land. Over here in the east, we see the Americans start a new offensive, now going down past these major cities and aiming to cut off supply routes to them. This offensive is eventually stalled as Brazil has adequate forces to deal with the invaders. Back over here, Brazil takes back this major city and officially kicks America out of Colombia. Near Trinidad, America will continue to try to take more land, now threatening this major city, but unsuccessfully taking it. And just to the west, their front line gets decimated as Brazilian forces push in pretty hard. But aside from the one little area that America has, the Americans are now out of Brazil. This means it is now time for Brazil and their allies to carry out an invasion of America over here in Panama. So their forces will cross the border for the second time in this war, and this time the resistance they are facing is a lot weaker than it was originally. Brazilian forces pretty much just swarm into the area, take these two major cities without any real difficulty, but are stopped by the Darien Gap and do not go any further. Heading back to this front line over here near Trinidad and Tobago, we see that America loses all of its ground, and eventually all forces are kicked off of the South American continent. This is a huge victory for Brazil. They have officially repelled all American forces and are now winning the war as they are occupying American territory. Knowing that there is way fewer vessels over here than there are over here, Brazil will prepare to make an amphibious landing in Panama to go around the Darien Gap and seize control of the entire thing. But before doing that, they go over to Central America and cut a deal with them, which they will suspiciously accept, and America is left kind of confused by this, because remember, Central America was given a new government by America, and while it's not an official puppet state, it kind of sort of is. So when they're kind of sort of not really puppet state accepts this deal, America is very angry. But the Brazilian landing in Panama happens. They take control over the area around the Darien Gap and continue their advance, now taking what technically is Panama City, but not in this universe, and then meet the border of Central America. America will order its not puppet state, to invade into Brazil, and they will refuse, saying that that is not what we're going to do. We are our own country, and you can't tell us what to do. To that, America will say, well, yes, but also no. And alas, it is reviewed, and America cannot do anything. Central America is its own country, and therefore they don't have to listen to them, meaning that America has been now kicked out only to this chain of islands that they have for themselves. And at this point, America will choose to leave the war. Brazil declares victory, and all of South America celebrates this day as the day that they reflected all American imperialism and defended their continent. The Assembly of Nations will applaud this war for not ending in the extinction of the human race. Not that it can, because of course nuclear bombs are gone now, but everyone seems pretty happy that Brazil won this war and America didn't continue their imperialism. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. And despite this being a major war, the biggest war since the War of Absolutes, this peace treaty is fairly simple. So Central America will be given yet another new government. This time it is democratically elected by the people of Central America, but the government is now officially Central American and has no influence from the American government. Central America won't be pursuing any alliances. They won't be pursuing any close relations with either America or Brazil. Simply enough, Central America states its neutrality. As for the Panama Canal, America will no longer have access to the control of the canal. It will now be officially recognized as an international thing controlled by the Assembly of Nations under the jurisdiction of Central America. Also, if I haven't said this already, I just want to say that this is the last ever video that I'm recording in this room, and I've recorded all of my videos on this channel pretty much in this room over my entire 9-year YouTube career. And yeah, this is the room that I grew up in. We moved here when I was 3. I grew up in this room, and I've recorded pretty much every video since I was 9 in this room. And this is the last one. This is a very special video, for me at least. This isn't the last video that is going to be posted with this background, because I already recorded Monday's video. So the video you see in 2 days from now, that's already been recorded when I'm recording this. But this is my last time recording. So yeah, just a little bit of personal lore in the Wixa video. But anyway, you can see that a little bit of land was exchanged between Central America and Brazil here. The old border looks something like this. Now, of course, I need to update that because America no longer has control over this area, but it went from this to this. Additionally, Brazil did gain a few of America's Caribbean islands, but not enough. America will retain control of this major island here that has the major city on it, but Brazil will gain control over all of these Caribbean islands. And all in all, this war pushes back America's blanket of influence. It now looks something like this, whereas before, of course, it looks something like this. So Brazil has gotten themselves a little bit of a repellent from that American influence. So that includes the America-Brazil war. America is still running their investigation into who exactly was supplying Brazil, because they have a funny feeling that somebody that shouldn't be supplying Brazil was indeed supplying Brazil. And if that somebody was supplying Brazil, that kind of changes everything. So America just wants to make sure that that is not the case. If that were the case, that would be not good news. But the investigation must run its course, so we're gonna let that cook and simmer. But for now, let's head on over here to India. Now, India looks like they got nuked 5 times, and that's not by design. That is the major city layer, so let's just hide that. I think India might have too many major cities. But more so, we're coming down here to southern India. These 3 countries are doing something that no one thought they would ever do. They're changing. You see, while these 2 countries are not in India's economic alliance, they are still heavily integrated with each other and India. They speak the same language, they hold the same heritage, the same culture, identity, same religion, just separated by sovereign borders. But these 3 countries have made a decision. And first of all, we have the dark purple country and the yellow country uniting together under one flag. The new capital city of this union will not be the one up north, it will be the one down here in the south. But that isn't the only thing that is changing, because this country here has become so integrated with India that it basically doesn't exist anymore. Now, I am kind of exaggerating that. Of course, it is still its own country, and of course, it is also still a nation that is in the Assembly of Nations, but it is kind of like in the EU, where you can just cross the border from France into Belgium. You can just cross the border from India into these guys. Even more integrated than the EU is, because these 2 are so similar. And with that in mind, India came to this southern country here and proposed a union. They offered to allow this country to join India as a state and to prosper and take full advantage of the Indian economy. This southern country will take that offer, consider it, and since India and them are so similar, they will make the decision to ultimately unite with India, officially ending the 3 countries that lied here in southern India for a very long time. Oh no, wait a minute. India has annexed all of China and Siberia. Okay, I didn't mean for that to happen. But yeah, that puts an end to the storyline of the three down here, and I say storyline very loosely because these countries never did anything. Over the course of their existence, they just simply integrated with India so heavily that this is their new fate, and the Dark Purple country, even though they just formed, are still considering joining India. So this is our new map of the Indian subcontinent. Only 2 countries remain on it, if we're not counting Bangladesh. And now we can head on over to Europe, because in Europe there are 2 events that are happening. Let's get the happy one out of the way first. The Dutch Republic will be creating a new economic alliance, and this is an economic alliance like none other. Now the world, admittedly, is full of economic alliances that are all very different. Some of them use the same currency, some of them are not. Like for example, the MEO uses the entire old empire currency, but over here in China, their new economical alliance does not use the same currency. Back up to Europe though, and over to the Dutch Republic. Like I said, they're making a new kind of economic alliance, and this one is aimed at not only bringing economies together, but bringing politics together. It is a political economic alliance, and it is very similar to the structure of the EU in real life. The difference is, though, it's not like the EU where they kind of integrate the countries together, where, you know, like I was saying earlier, you can go from France to Belgium without a passport. This isn't to that level. It's not that united, but it is still a political and economic alliance aimed at bringing politics and economy together in Europe. But the Octagon Alliance will be formed, and there will be a ton of countries joining it. This includes France, Iberia, the Dark Cyan Team, Catalonia, the newly released Red Team, Switzerland, Germany, Denmark, and Iceland. So a ton of countries join in this new European Economic Alliance, which will slowly but surely bring together the politics and integrate the economies of those countries, in which the Dutch Republic is hoping will stop any European wars from ever happening again. Now they do recognize that that is a simply impossible task. You cannot prevent war in any kind of place with the means of an alliance. Simply, that's just not how it works. But they hope that bringing these countries together economically will also bring them together politically, which it is also designed to do. Anyway, I did say that this was the good or the happy part of coming to Europe. There is a bad part to coming to Europe. Oh, Rome. Previously, they lost the Red Country, and before that, they lost Catalonia. Additionally, they tried to sell off some of their Mediterranean islands to America in exchange for forgiving debt and receiving aid in their collapse, or their economic collapse. But heading on over to the stability map, we see that Rome is in a bright red color, but that bright red color has shifted to dark red, as Rome is now in full collapse. You see, what Rome has been trying to do to stop their inevitable collapse is releasing territory one by one in areas which they think will break away if they don't stop their collapse. Since Rome is broke and doesn't have any money, it's kind of hard to stop that collapse, so what they did to put a band-aid on it all was to just release these 2 rebellious territories to stop any kind of civil war from happening. It turns out that was their biggest mistake. Giving independence to Catalonia led to the independence of the Red Country, and now there are a ton of other regions in Rome that are either calling for the government to give up their power or calling for the independence of their region. Rome tries to declare martial law, but it is too late, and the Roman Civil War will begin. On the day that martial law is declared across Rome, multiple rebellious groups will rise up. Notably, one will rise up over here near France, another will show its face up in the north where it annexed land near Germany, and another will show itself between the Red Team and Switzerland. While these areas are in the furthest reaches of the Roman Empire, it is still detrimental, as the ideas of rebellion start to spread inland in Rome. And eventually, a block of the government will break away that opposes the Roman communist. The democratic order of Rome rises and seeks to put an end to the communist government in Rome. This government will find its most success in very interesting areas, notably in the islands across the Mediterranean and the southern tip of Italy, as well as where Rome has its oldest land over here in the Balkan Peninsula, historic Purple Team land, ancient even. With Rome now in full-on collapse, the Roman military will do its best to stop all of the expanding fronts. They'll send troops up to deal with the Pink Team and have a lot of success in pushing them back, recapturing a major city, and squeezing these guys all the way over here to the corridor with the Swiss and the Red Team country. As for the Upper German country, they have a lot of difficulty in pushing back against these guys, as they are heavily supplied, likely by one of their neighbors. Now on to the opposition government, which has established that Roman democratic order. Rome will attempt to send their forces in and capture major cities in the historic land, which they do, but oftentimes they are met by their own civilians who are doing their utmost best to stop the advance of the Roman military. At this point, the civilians of Rome are cheering for the downfall of their country. Rome is going to call out for help. First, they're going to call on the Assembly of Nations, the organization which they felt forced into joining after World War IV, but the phone will not be answered. Rome is left alone. The Assembly of Nations outright refuses to answer the request of aid from Rome, which Rome does have the right to request. The Assembly of Nations has a program in which if a country is in civil distress, civil war, anything like that, they are allowed to take money in from foreign countries in the AN. All they have to do is contact the council responsible for such a thing, but the council is not picking up. Rome is cut off. They do not have access to AN funds. Additionally, the Rome will call out to their old allies like Poland, but Poland says that they are unable to help out Rome for reasons which Rome cannot know. Rome will also call out to America, someone who they are friendly with, but America will also not answer the phone. No matter who Rome calls out to help for, they will not answer. They're getting no responses from anybody. And so Rome will be forced to fight this civil war all by themselves, even though they honestly shouldn't have to. Their friends should be coming to them with aid. The AN should be giving them the money they need, but that is not what is happening here. It's almost as if Rome is being deliberately sabotaged. Back over in the Italian peninsula, the Roman armies will push back against the civil unrest people. That is, the civil unrest people with very many guns. But where Rome really starts to fall apart is up in the north, where these rebellious groups all of a sudden are sprouting all across northern Rome. It's not that they're super overpowered and are just this much stronger than Rome, it's just that these areas of Rome are simply surrendering themselves. Like province by province, they're surrendering and agreeing to join the cause. At this point, Rome is losing control over entire regions of their country, now losing all access to the French region, and also being cut into two pieces as this rebellious group splits Rome into two parts. The government doesn't have the money they need to pay their military, and despite printing their own money and causing hyperinflation, it's all worthless now. The Romans have pretty much destroyed their own economy at this point. And so they'll be giving an order to their troops. You are now allowed to steal and rob civilians for food and money. We don't have the resources we need to pay you in both food and money, so just go get it yourself. You have the authority of the government to either rob a civilian of their money or go into a market and take all the food. When the Assembly of Nations hears about this order, they are, a little bit mad to say the least. Not only is this a violation against their own people, it's also a violation of the Golden Convention, you know, the thing that was made after World War IV to stop anything like this from ever happening again. And Rome is kind of like the first country to actually deliberately and thoroughly violate this world's version of the Geneva Convention. And just to let you know, the AN and the UN are very similar, but one area that the AN excels in where the UN falls short is in the area of response. When you break an international law, the UN will just slap you in the face. When you break an international law in this universe, the punishment is a little bit more severe, and there are countries that are willing to take action. What Rome did will be reviewed by the Security Council of the Assembly of Nations. Once again, that includes America, Mexico, Ireland, Greece, India, Tibet, China, and South Africa. These countries are responsible for enforcing punishment if a country breaks international law, and if a majority of the Assembly agrees and votes in favor of punishing that country. So the Assembly will vote, do we punish Rome for breaking international law? A lot of the small countries in the world will vote in favor of punishing Rome. They want to see the AN in action. They want to ensure that it actually does its job. So all the small countries vote in favor. Now, as for the larger countries, their vote will be a little bit different. For example, the Mesopotamian countries will vote not to punish Rome. They think that they should just let it go. This is none of the AN's business. But when the entire assembly votes, the majority rules, and a majority of countries say that Rome should be punished, the Security Council will now also vote on the matter if they should enforce the punishment. America votes no, Mexico votes no, Ireland votes yes, South Africa votes yes, India votes yes, Tibet votes yes, and China votes yes. And also Greece votes yes, if I didn't say that already. So 6 out of 8 of the Security Council members will vote in favor of punishing Rome. This isn't like the UN in real life. They don't need unanimous, they just need a majority, and a majority have voted to do so. So while America and Mexico themselves will not be directly enforcing this, these other Security Council members will, and it is now time for action in Rome. The Security Council members go to each European nation around Rome and request that they use their military to intervene in this conflict and to stop the humanitarian crisis. A few countries will accept to join. That includes France, the Dutch Republic, Germany, and the Security Council member themselves, Greece. But what we see happening here in this intervention is quite interesting, because French forces will indeed get involved in the conflict. but not on the side of the rebellion. France will start to invade into the rebellion and kill off all troops that are in open defiance to Rome, and subsequently in open defiance to them as they completely occupy this area of Rome. The Dutch will also send their forces in, doing something very similar in occupying this entire northern area away from Rome, both their government and their rebellious peoples. Same thing in Germany. They reach all the way down to these couple of major cities and eventually stop. Now, we do not see Greece do this. They do not openly invade the democratic government in Rome. Instead, they send their troops into this area and form a new army group, a combined group between the new Roman government and the Greeks. With the Greeks now directly involved in the conflict, the Roman government is in trouble, as Greece's military is by far overpowering that of the Roman military due to the fact that Rome once again has zero money. When a country's bank account is empty, they are pretty much up for grabs, and that is pretty much what is happening to Rome. So the new Roman government will start to push back against the Romans, and eventually they do reach the capital city of Rome, which is, well, Rome. And when they reach this city, there is an extremely bloody battle that takes place, one of the most violent and even gruesome battles since the War of Absolutes, far outpacing and performing any kind of violent battle that happened over here. Now, when I say violent, I'm talking about like just pure chaos and just death happening everywhere. That is what the Battle of Rome is. You know, that happens in normal conventional war like what we saw in Brazil, but just not to the extent of what's happening in Rome. Like things are being set on fire, everything's burning down, people are killing each other, civilians are killing each other. It's just gruesome. So the new government will just go ahead and take Rome, and they will find the leaders of the Communist Party and arrest them. Anyway, the Dutch Republic will continue to invade into Rome and take territory from them. Same thing with Germany, until we have something a little bit interesting happening. These rebellions no longer call themselves rebels. Instead, they start to refer to themselves as militias, hoping to defend Rome and its identity. They want to ensure that Roman culture is not destroyed by this war, so what they do is they rejoin the government that they were just fighting against. It's a very weird and confusing event, but also extremely suspicious. Rome is now fighting in total warfare, and more Roman civilians in the unoccupied territory are starting to understand and like the government. The civilians are now helping out their government after just defying it, and it's for a really good reason. In the final few weeks of Rome, a discovery is made which helps to explain the fall of Rome. Before World War IV, the Roman economy was strong. It wasn't like anything extraordinary, but it was definitely capable. It was a top 15 economy. When World War IV officially broke out, they took on a ton of debt. They owed money to countries like America, and while their debt to America was genuine, their debt to other countries, not so much. Specifically, Rome's debt to other Security Council members, like India and China, had some extreme fine print. And that fine print was extreme interest rates. So when it was time to pay back their debt after World War IV, Rome experienced a hike in the amount of money that they owed to these other Security Council members, like Greece, for example. Rome knew that they would be unable to pay back all this debt. They knew that they would be in trouble if they didn't either, so they decided to join the Assembly of Nations. They hoped that joining this new political international order would allow for their country to not be looked at suspiciously, but be looked at as like any other country in the world, showing that Rome is willing to collaborate with other countries and take a step forward in this new era. That turned out to be the biggest mistake that Rome could have made. These Security Council members had planned for Rome to join. They wanted to squeeze Rome into joining the AN, and with the extreme interest rates that they were charging this country, they knew that Rome would join, and they did. After Rome joined though, things got a little dicey, because the Assembly of Nations wanted to squeeze Rome of all of its money and force it into an economic collapse, which would eventually lead to a political and full-on collapse, with multiple rebellions and countries breaking away. The Assembly of Nations' plan to get rid of Rome was successful, and many countries knowingly took part in this, like the ones that were involved in this war: France, the Dutch Republic, Germany, and Greece. The masterminds behind the plan, of course, were the Security Council members that didn't like Rome, like Greece and India. The reason that America and Mexico did not vote in favor of punishing Rome is because they kind of sort of maybe knew about this plan to squeeze Rome of all of its money and force it to collapse. It's just that if America was to open their mouth about, squeezing Rome of its life, they would be deemed a hypocrite and they would be exposed, so they chose to stay silent. Now, the plan to collapse Rome, it wasn't like a public AN policy or anything. A lot of countries did not know about it, and a lot of countries still don't know about it. It's a relatively secretive thing, and on the surface, it just looks like that the AN was, getting involved to stop the humanitarian crisis, which was indeed real. It's just that the humanitarian crisis was also kind of like a false flag into just setting your forces in and getting rid of Rome. But the new Roman government is successful, and the Roman communist government has been gotten rid of. Many civilians in Rome are happy and are looking forward to the days ahead, while the ones that were fighting up here in the last couple of days of the Roman Empire's existence are skeptical and scared. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the Treaty of Rome, which will completely reshape this country. So looking at this treaty here, we can see that Rome has been heavily damaged. They've lost a ton of land, and let's go ahead and break it down a little bit further. Starting over here in the far west, we can see that France has completely annexed this portion of Rome away from them, and it is now integrated back into French territory. Looking at the stability map, we can kind of see what it used to look like and now how France has annexed that. But heading on over here to the Dutch Republic, they will be annexing this small portion of Rome. On over to Germany, they'll be annexing this large portion of Rome, which also includes war spoils from World War IV, something that Rome isn't too happy about losing, but whatever. Now, noticeably, you'll see that there are two new countries here in the north of Italy. This one bears resemblance to a very old country that was made into a region of Rome. That region has gained its independence, so if you want to still call it that country, technically you can, but it was more so a Roman region than it was a country, just, you know, for the longest amount of time. So it's either or, really. Now, as for this one, this is kind of a newer one. Now, I know previously, okay, I'm just going to show you the map. This is an old map, but there was this lime green country here that kind of went like this. This technically isn't them, but if you want it to be, sure, go ahead. Anyway, that isn't all that Rome is losing. Coming down here to the south, we'll see that the tip of Italy, as well as Sicily and all of Sardinia, will be breaking away and forming a new country, the Southern Roman Republic. These two islands over here will be relinquished back over to Catalonia. America, of course, will retain control over this one, as well as all the other islands they got from Rome. And then finally, we have a very historic border getting an update, as Greece will be annexing these few provinces away from Rome and expanding their border. Now, as you can see, this war was not only driven by Rome's humanitarian issues, but also driven by the, I guess, the lust for land. France and the Dutch Republic both lost land to Rome, and now they're getting their old land back. Some countries around the world will, resonate with this, saying that, that's fine. Rome was doing something bad, so, these countries have the right to do that. Other countries will, enforce sovereignty, like America says that this is wrong. This war should not have been used to gain land from Rome. This war should have only happened to stop the humanitarian issue. So there are two sides to this, and both have some pretty good points. Now, as for the new capital cities, this blue country will have their capital be right there. That is a historical capital city, and this green country only has one major city in which they will make into their capital city. The pink team will also be making a capital city, and theirs will be right here in the north. As for the Assembly of Nations, all of the new countries that were carved out of this peace treaty will be joining the AN. So the green, the blue, and then also the pink country will join. Now, what about these two other breakaway territories like Catalonia and the red team? They broke away on their own, meaning that there was no binding treaty to force them into the AN. These guys are kind of binded to it, whereas these guys are not, so they are allowed to make their own decision and join if they want to. I hate to have it all seem to happen at once, because it truly wouldn't happen all at once, but these two countries will eventually, over the next few years, join in on the AN, making Western Europe very united in this cause. Now, as for the old Roman government, they are, like I said, kicked out, and they are no longer in power. The democratic order of Rome won the war and thus win the government, and so Rome will become a democracy, and all of these other new countries will follow suit, also becoming democracies of their own. Did France not have one? Okay, well, France is a democracy, if you didn't know. Here is a quick look at both the technology map here you can see, and then here's a quick peek at the stability map. So Europe as a whole is pretty stable. The yellow color is kind of like right in the middle of stable and unstable. It's kind of like a neutral thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then like the closer to red you get, the worse. So orange is unstable, and then red is very unstable. And then as we saw earlier, dark red is in the state of civil unrest / civil war. And then obviously the greener colors mean that countries are more stable. So lime green is stable, and then dark green is very stable. Same formula with technology. So darker color for technology means more technologically advanced. And then this like teal color here means untechnologically advanced, just not as advanced. Anyway, there is just one last thing that we need to talk about, and that is America's little investigation that they were running into who was supplying Brazil. All right, so first of all, let's review why every country joined in on Brazil's side in that war, which also reminds me that these alliances are very temporary, and that the orange country and red Australia did not permanently join, so we can get rid of their circle as well as these guys' circle. But obviously these two countries joined for the same reason that Brazil joined, to stop American imperialism and kick them out of South America. America knows why the Orange Country joined, and they will choose to redact the information from the Assembly of Nations report. Basically, they're withholding all information as to why the Orange Country joined, which other nations find very suspicious. Anyway, though, there's not much we can do about that. What about Red Australia? Well, they also joined for the same reason as to why Brazil joined, to stop American imperialism, this time just focused around Oceania. They were successful, and now America is investigating all the countries that aided Brazil. Okay, so most of the countries that are aiding Brazil are countries that don't like America and don't like imperialism in total. These are countries that have been colonized before, so a lot of African countries, and also countries that have just been involved in a lot of wars. Those were the main ones supplying Brazil, but America does discover exactly what they were hoping they would not discover. A super powerful donator to Brazil, and not just any super powerful donator, one that is the strongest country in the world. America discovers that China was aiding Brazil in the entirety of their war against America, sending them money, guns, equipment, and even troops. When the Assembly of Nations was created between America and China, there was an agreement made that the world would be divided up between influential barriers. I've talked about this before, but basically America established their zones of influence and China established their zones of influence, and they both respected that. Now, before the Assembly of Nations was made, we know that America was doing some funny business in other countries and possibly toppling governments, such as the Pink Team government, which rebelled against the old government in World War IV and threw out the dictator and set up a democracy. While watching World War IV, we all thought that that was just a civilian uprising, but as it turns out, that was a foreign invested uprising, one that was carried out by America, and that impeded on China's zone of influence. So China's response to that was the creation of the alliance that we see here, both the economic and military alliance, the Triangle Alliance. And of course, in response to that, we saw America make their alliance, which is the 3-Point Star Alliance, or I've also seen it called the Mercedes Alliance. But America believes that their actions in the Pink Team were justified because it happened before they agreed to those spheres of influence. It happened just before they agreed to do it. America might have known that they were going into a meeting with China to set up spheres of influence and that the Pink Team was in that sphere. So what they did is, before the meeting, they toppled the Pink Team government, and then they had the meeting. And China was kind of aware of this, which is why we saw them make their military alliance and the escalation, so on and so forth. But in America's head, they think they are justified because it happened before the agreed upon influential boundaries, whereas China is saying that no, that's not true, because we already knew what the influential boundaries were going to be. We just hadn't legally agreed to it yet. So who do you guys think is right? Do you think China is in the right here, or do you think America is in the right here? Legally, America isn't wrong, but China does bring up a good point. America already knew they were going to do influential boundaries, and they already knew that the Pink Team would be in China's influential boundary. Anyway though, now back to the present. America is very pissed off. They're so pissed off that they're kind of done with this whole working together with China thing, and America will be severing all relations with China. Diplomatic activities are put on pause, and the world rumbles just a little bit. But this isn't the only thing that America has planned. They're putting a new plan into motion. This is their plan B. They will be expanding their alliance to include one new country, and this country will be a game changer. India will be making an official entrance into America's military alliance. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this episode of What If Civilization Started Over. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All of that support is super greatly appreciated, as we're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers relatively soon. We're about 5,000 away, so all the support helps us get to our goal. Once again, thank you all for watching. This is my last ever recording in this room, so I'm taking it all in right now. Thank you all for the support again, and I will see you all in the next episode. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Serminator, Static FN, Jazzy Jerboa, Turn Mapping, CTG on YT, Omega the YouTuber, Vista Napper, Garbage Trucks, Xander Pro, Wixo, 7353, Gamer, RS, Australian Geo Mapping, Augusto, Norwegian, Gail Martinez, Freezioid, Laser Taze, Pablo Sigma Cat, Toad 45, Death Strider X, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.